Welcome to HFY Beyond Terra, where humanity doesn't just survive, it becomes the galaxy's biggest surprise. Subscribe, and let's go beyond Terra.
The casualty list arrived at dusk, delivered by a drone that hummed like an insect too stubborn to die. Governor Matriarch Surin Kale did not open it right away. She stood at the high window of her war room, watching the storm front crawl over the basalt plains of Vihesa Prime. Lightning stitched the horizon in thin, white seams. Far below, the city's shield dome glowed a patient blue, as if even the sky had agreed to be held at bay. Behind her, aides pretended to be busy. No one spoke unless spoken to. It was a small mercy, the kind that grew out of fear and respect in equal measure. Surin's claws, short, elegant, ceremonial, now rested on the sealed packet. The insignia of the Third Legion was stamped into the foil, the winged spear, the iron star, her daughter's legion. When she finally broke the seal, the foil tore too easily. The list unfolded like an accusation. There were names, ranks, serials. Some were circled in red, unrecovered remains. Some were marked with a black slash, confirmed dead. Surin's eyes skipped down faster than her breath. She knew she would find it. She always found it. Captain Reen Kale, 3rd Legion Forward Recon. Status, KIA, body not recoverable. The room narrowed to a point. The storm outside became mute. The city below became a painting. Her aides shifted. One of them, thin, young, too soft to survive the front, made a choking sound and pressed a hand to her mouth as if she could push grief back down. Surin did not scream. She did not fall. She simply turned the paper over as if it might be a mistake printed on the wrong side. It was not. A heat rose in her chest, familiar and ancient. Rage was easy. It had always been easy, but grief was different. Grief was a weapon that turned inward, and it did not care how many wars you had won. She was competent, Surin said softly, and the words sounded wrong because they were too small for what they meant. She was cautious. He would not have been careless. General Threx, her iron-backed military advisor, stepped forward. His shoulder plates clicked. The ravine collapsed, Matriarch, orbital strike shockwave. The recon team was cut off. Our retrieval units. Retrieval units? Surin's voice sharpened. You retrieved nothing. Threx held the stare. He had held stares from artillery, from insurgents, from dying comrades. We brought back the living we could. Surin's claws sank into the edge of the table. The wood groaned. Leave, she said. No one moved. The young aide took a step as if to offer comfort, then froze under Surin's gaze and bowed low. One by one they retreated, quiet as a retreat from a battlefield, careful not to trigger the next explosion. Threx was last. At the doorway he paused. I am sorry, he said, and for him it was almost a confession. Surin did not answer. When the door sealed, she allowed herself a single, undignified breath that shook her shoulders. Reen. She remembered Reen at 6 cycles old, climbing the fountain statues in the palace courtyard, laughing as guards begged her to come down. She remembered Reen at 12, insisting on training with the Legion cadets because I'm not fragile just because I have your blood. She remembered the day she pinned the captain's insignia on her daughter's uniform, how proud she'd been, how terrified. Surin had led a province. She had negotiated treaties. She had ordered executions and called it necessary. None of it prepared her for this. She stared at the name until the letters blurred. Then the comm terminal chimed. Once, twice, a third time urgent. Surin's hand hovered over the console as if it might bite her. Governor Kale, a voice crackled through, tight, strained, unfamiliar. This is Field Station 9. We have a situation. Surin's throat went dry. Speak clearly. A pause, static, then a human has arrived. That, of all things, was not what she expected. Humans were allied barely. Their world, Terra, had joined the coalition late and loudly, the way desperate, stubborn things did. They were new to the stars, new to the politics, new to the ritualized cruelty of interspecies war. They were also difficult. They asked questions. They argued with orders. They volunteered for impossible jobs and then acted offended when people called them reckless. Surin had met a human diplomat once, a small creature with soft hands and eyes that refused to look down. It had smiled at her like fear was optional. "A human?" Surin repeated. "Why is a human at Station 9? He says he has something. He says," the voice wavered, then lowered. "He says he has Captain Reen." Surin's claws flicked out. She slammed them into the console hard enough to dent the metal. "That is not possible," she hissed. "He's here, Governor. He's bleeding. He refuses to sit. He keeps saying he needs a surgical bay and power for a cryopod." Surin's vision sharpened painfully. "Put him on screen." The camera feed snapped on. The image was shaky, framed by the harsh lighting of a field station corridor. Soldiers stood in a half-circle, weapons half-raised, uncertain whether they were guarding against an enemy or a miracle. At the center stood a human. He was taller than the diplomats, broader, dressed in coalition fatigues marked with the medical insignia and something else. An old Terran symbol stitched onto his sleeve. A serpent coiled around a staff. His hair was dark and plastered to his forehead with sweat. One side of his face was smeared with dried blood. His hands, bare hands, no gloves, were braced on the edge of a long, insulated case hovering on anti-grav skids. The human looked directly into the camera as if he knew where Surin's eyes were. "Governor Kale?" he asked. His voice was hoarse but steady, like a man who had decided exhaustion was a problem for later. Surin's pulse thundered. "Who are you?" "Lieutenant Jonah Mercer," he said. "Terran Medical Corps attached to Coalition 3rd Legion Support Division." Support Division, not front line, not recon, not supposed to be where ravines collapsed and bodies vanished. Surin forced her voice into steel. "You claim you have my daughter." Jonah swallowed. His eyes flicked toward the case. "I do." "Open it," Surin commanded. His jaw tightened. "Not here, not like this. She's in suspended hypothermia and chemical stasis. If we break the seal without proper environment, I might as well have left her on the battlefield." "Might," Surin spat the word. "You bring me uncertainty as if it is a gift." Jonah's shoulders rose and fell once like he was holding back a retort. "I bring you a chance." A murmur rippled through the soldiers. Surin leaned closer to the screen, eyes narrowing. "Why?" The human blinked. "Why what? Why did you retrieve her?" Jonah's mouth opened, then shut. His throat worked. "Because she wasn't dead." Surin felt something crack inside her, hope, too sharp to hold. The comm channel stuttered as another voice pushed in. General Threx, likely from the station's command line. "Governor, permission to detain the human until we verify." "Silence," Surin said, and the word carried enough authority to make a general choke. She looked at Jonah again. "Where is the station's surgical bay?" Jonah's shoulders sagged in relief that looked almost painful. "2 corridors down left. They have power, but not enough. I need a constant draw for the pod's warming cycle, plus sterile field, plus." "I will provide what you need," Surin said. Jonah hesitated. "I need you to understand something, Governor. She's alive, but not stable. Vhessan physiology is tough, but the exposure, the crush injuries." "Stop!" Surin's claws flexed. "Do the work, speak only in results." Jonah's eyes held hers through the camera. Yes, ma'am, the feed cut. For the first time in cycles, Surin Kale ran. She arrived at Field Station 9 with the storm at her back and a squadron of security drones at her sides. The station was a bruise of metal against the barren landscape, its shield generator humming like a tired heart. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and burnt circuitry. The corridors were too narrow for her honor guard to follow in formation. They broke into pairs, eyes scanning everything. Surin did not slow. They led her to the surgical bay. Through the viewing window, she saw Jonah Mercer moving like a man arguing with time. He barked orders to V. Hessen technicians who looked both offended and obedient. He had stripped off his outer jacket. His arms were wrapped in pressure bandages that seeped red at the edges. The insulated case was open now. Within it lay a stasis cradle, mist curling off the edges like ghost breath. And inside that cradle, Reen. Surin's knees nearly failed. She caught herself against the door frame, claws scratching metal. Her daughter looked smaller than Surin remembered, not because she had changed, but because the world had. Reen's skin, scaled in the V. Hessen pattern of slate and silver, was pale. Her lips were tinted blue. A medical mask covered her muzzle, tubes threaded into her arms and chest, monitors blinking weakly. There was a jagged bruise across her temple. One horn had a crack running through it, wrapped in a stabilizing brace, but her chest rose, barely, but it rose. Surin pressed her forehead to the glass and let out a sound that was not a word. Behind her, Threx's voice softened. Matriarch. Surin did not turn. If this is some human deception, she whispered, I will not merely kill him, I will ensure Terra remembers the meaning of consequence. I don't think it is deception, Threx said quietly. Look at him. Surin looked. Jonah was leaning over Reen, adjusting a drip line with hands that trembled, not from fear. Fear made creatures cautious. This tremble was from exhaustion and stubborn refusal to stop. A technician, older, experienced, gestured at a monitor, arguing about dosage. Jonah snapped something in Terran tongue, then switched to Coalition Standard. Your charts are for a healthy V. Hessen, he said. She's been in hypoxia and stasis. Her kidneys are compromised. You push that amount, you'll kill her. You speak as if you know our blood better than we do. The technician bristled. Jonah's mouth tightened. I speak like someone who watched her heart stop twice and refused to let it stay that way. The room went still. Surin's claws dug into the doorframe again. Twice, Jonah turned toward the window as if he felt her stare. His eyes met hers. For a second, the frantic medic became a man who had been carrying a secret on his back through fire. He stepped to the door and keyed it open. The surgical bay's air washed over Surin, sterile and cold. Jonah stood aside, not bowing, not posturing, simply making room for the mother of the patient. Governor, he said. Surin walked forward as if the floor might vanish beneath her. She approached the cradle slowly, every instinct screaming to touch, to hold, to confirm. Reen's eyes were closed. The ridge above her brows was creased faintly, as if even unconsciousness could not make her stop frowning at the universe. Surin reached out, claws hovering above her daughter's hand. Jonah spoke softly. Please don't, not yet. Her skin is fragile from the cooling cycle, and if she reflexes... Surin's voice trembled with anger and love. She might tear the line, Jonah said, and we need that line. Surin's hand curled into a fist, then relaxed. She lowered it to the edge of the cradle instead, fingers gripping metal until it creaked. How, she managed. How did you find her? Jonah's gaze dropped to the floor for a moment as if replaying it cost him something. "The ravine," he said. "After the strike, we sent out drones to look for survivors. Mostly we found heat signatures from burning wreckage. Then one drone flagged something weird, a pocket under the debris where the temperature didn't match the surroundings." "Because she was in stasis?" Threx asked, stepping in. Jonah nodded. "She de-triggered her suit's emergency protocol. Vhessen's suits are good, better than ours. It cooled her down, slowed everything. That saved her from bleeding out, but it also meant she looked dead to most sensors." Surin's throat tightened. "So you dug her out?" Jonah's lips twitched, humorless. "We didn't have digging equipment, we had our hands." Surin stared at his bandaged arms. "And then?" she asked, voice sharp again because softness hurt too much. "And then she coded," Jonah said simply. "Twice. First time from shock when we warmed her too fast. Second time from internal bleeding we didn't see until it was almost too late." Surin's eyes narrowed. "You operated on her in the field." "I did what I could," Jonah said. "I packed wounds, stabilized the horn fracture, splinted ribs, ran blood substitute. I'm trained for humans, but anatomy is anatomy when you're looking at organs and trying to keep them inside the body." One of the technicians muttered something about arrogance. Jonah didn't react. He didn't need to. He was past pride. He was running on principle. Surin leaned closer to Reen, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. "Why risk yourself?" she whispered, as if asking the universe, not the human. "You could have left her. No one would have blamed you." Jonah's voice softened. "She didn't leave my people." Surin's gaze snapped to him. He nodded toward Reen. 2 months ago, outside Kestrel Pass, a coalition squad got pinned. Human squad, the rest of the line fell back. The comms were jammed. They were going to die out there." Threx frowned, trying to remember. Jonah continued. "Captain Kale disobeyed an order. She took her recon team into open ground under fire and pulled them out. Lost 2 of her own doing it. She got yelled at for it later." Surin remembered the after-action report. She remembered signing the reprimand because discipline mattered, because war was not a place for sentiment. Her claws twitched with sudden shame. Jonah watched her expression change and didn't press. He simply said, "When I saw her in that rubble, I didn't see an alien officer. I saw the person who decided strangers were worth saving." Surin swallowed hard. "And you decided the same." Jonah's shoulders lifted in a tired shrug. "Yeah." The monitors beeped steadily. A soft, ugly sound came from Reen's throat, half cough, half gasp. Surin froze. Jonah moved instantly, adjusting oxygen flow, scanning the vitals with a practiced flick of his eyes. Reen's eyelids fluttered. For one terrifying second, they did not open. Then they did. Her eyes, gold with a ring of dark slate, blinked at the bright lights. Confusion, pain, and something stubborn as iron flickered across her face. She tried to lift her head and immediately winced. Jonah leaned in, voice firm. "Easy, don't move." Reen's gaze drifted, unfocused, then locked onto Surin. The world stopped. Mother," Reen rasped. Her voice was rough, scraped raw by tubes and thirst. Surin's heart clenched so hard she thought it might break. She reached out again, forgetting every warning, then caught herself, fingers hovering over the air. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I am here." Reen's eyes widened slightly, disbelief flooding in. "Am I?" "Dead," Surin let out a breath that sounded like laughter and sobbing tangled together. "No, and if you ever leave me again, I will drag you back myself." Reen's mouth twitched into the smallest, weakest smile. "That sounds like you." Her gaze drifted toward Jonah. Recognition flickered. "Human medic," Jonah nodded. Hey, Captain. Reen's eyes narrowed faintly the way they did when she was trying to focus through pain. Did I hit you? Jonah huffed a laugh. Not yet. You did bite me, though. Surin stared at him. Jonah lifted a bandaged wrist. Reflex, you have strong jaws. Reen's smile grew, then she winced again, breath hitching. Jonah's humor vanished. He checked the monitors, adjusted medication with a careful touch. Surin watched him work, watched how his hands trembled and still managed precision. Watched how he spoke to her daughter like she was a person, not a symbol, not a political asset. Watched how the technicians, proud, skeptical, had begun following his instructions without complaint because results were the only language war respected. Surin's voice came out low. Lieutenant Mercer. He glanced up. Yes, you have committed a terrible offense, she said. The room tensed. Threx's hand moved subtly toward his sidearm. Jonah did not flinch. He only said, okay. Surin stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. You have stolen my grief from me. You have taken something I was prepared to carry for the rest of my life. Jonah's throat bobbed. And now, Surin continued, claws flexing, I must live with gratitude. It is inconvenient. A technician made a startled sound that might have been laughter. Jonah blinked, then exhaled slowly. Sorry about that. Surin's eyes held his unblinking, a predator measuring a strange creature that had wandered into her territory and refused to act like prey. What do humans say, she asked, when someone returns from death? Jonah's lips parted, uncertain. Depends on the human. Surin's gaze dropped to Reen, whose eyes had closed again, exhaustion pulling her under. Then Surin looked back at Jonah and said, very carefully, as if learning a new weapon, thank you. Jonah's face softened in a way that made him look younger, almost fragile. You're welcome. Surin straightened. The room seemed to breathe again. What do you require? She asked, returning to the language she knew, logistics, payment duty. Jonah hesitated. She needs a full recovery facility, a place with VHESN-compatible rehab, plus someone who can translate the pain meds properly, and rest, real rest. Surin nodded once sharp. She will have the best. Jonah cleared his throat. Also permission to stay on her case. I know her injuries. I know what went wrong before. If something starts crashing, I can catch it. Threx frowned. A human in the matriarch's medical wing is. Surin silenced him with a glance. She looked at Jonah. If you fail, I will know. Jonah gave a tired, honest nod. Fair. Surin's gaze softened a fraction. If you succeed, she stopped, because she did not know how to finish that sentence without making it sound like a threat or a promise, and this was something else entirely. Jonah, perhaps sensing it, didn't force it. I'll do my job, he said. Surin turned to the technicians. Prepare transport. My daughter returns to the capital tonight. They moved instantly. As the room shifted into controlled urgency, Surin remained beside Reen's cradle, watching her breathe. A mother watching a war unwind, one breath at a time. Outside, the storm continued to hammer the shield dome. Inside, for the first time since the casualty list arrived, Surin Kale felt the weight of the universe shift. Not because the war had ended, not because peace had been won, but because a human, bleeding, exhausted, impossibly stubborn, had walked into her grief and refused to let it stay. And in doing so had reminded a hardened alien ruler of something terrifyingly simple. Sometimes the most dangerous thing a human brings to the battlefield is not their weapons. It's their decision that nobody is not recoverable.